Joining us now, Representative Trey Lamar from the Mississippi House of Representatives. Trey, how's it going today?
Hello, Gerard. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, and just so the audience will know, Trey serves as the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee. It's been a bit of a busier session there, Representative Lamar, than I anticipated, and I think most of us did before we got started. And you're the one that stirred it all up there. You, of course, offered this very controversial bill, House Bill 1020. We've been talking about it quite a bit on the program that would extend the Capitol Complex Improvement District, also known as the CCID. I was in the gallery, Trey, when you guys were debating this, and I've talked about it on the show. I noticed on the north side of the chamber in the gallery sat the mayor of Jackson and a number, what appeared to be in his party. And I was on the south side of the chamber looking down and listening. I watched all the amendments offered by Representative Johnson and the discussion back and forth, and you have, and him, of course, alternating in the well, talking about the amendments. Yeah. I must say, before I let you talk, I must say that I observed, and I talked about this on the show, the decibel level of the voice votes from both sides was perhaps the loudest I've ever heard on these amendments. Now, I'll admit, I haven't been there for certainly as many as you have, but it kind of hurt my head listening to those voice votes, which I think just demonstrates the passion about this issue on both sides. Of course, it's passed the House, headed over to the Senate. Tell us about it.
Well, you're right, Gerard, certainly about one thing. It has been a busy year. It's been an election year. People said it's going to be quiet. Well, it's last year was tough, but man, this year has been, we've had a lot of bills come through my committee and a lot of difficult issues, both just from a just complex standpoint, both politically, but not just politically. We've got issues. We've got a software tax bill right now that's extremely complicated. May need to bring you in to help us understand some of those terms. But I've had to learn a new language, I feel like, to even have conversations about that bill. But a lot of issues. You're right. You know, we had 401 that's still in the Senate, that's still out there earlier this year, that's controversial, and you and I have had conversations about that before. But nothing like 1020 this week. I mean,
right.
It really reached the climax with 1020. And I'll start out, you know, the mainstream media, I don't think I've ever seen a worse instance with a certain media outlet just trying to get clicks. And they succeeded. I mean, the Mississippi Today article that they released saying, you know, it mentions white versus black several times in their headline. You know, it ended up getting picked up coast to coast. And I guess that was their intention because that's what they did. They even went back and used a picture of me that was 5 or 6 years old because I was wearing a seersucker suit. So I guess that suit fit their narrative of race.
Well, what's up with that?
They couldn't take a picture from this week. But yeah, go back and look at the article. You'll see the picture of me is about 5 years old. So
okay.
So anybody who picked up on that or just used that as the clickbait that the headline solicited would automatically believe or assume that this was all about race, when the bill itself never mentions race. It has no racial intent or animus whatsoever, and I would argue no racial effect. We had many of those conversations on the floor. The bill is simply designed to assist the Hinds County judiciary and improve our judicial resources in Hinds County. I said this from the floor a couple of times. I believe law enforcement is only so good as the judiciary that backs it up. And, you know, we've got a severe backlog in the Hinds County judicial system and our criminal courts there. And really, we're just trying to help. That's all there is to it. I hate that the theme that so many people saw was the racial part of it, but I chose to not get down into that gutter. Uh, and I chose just to stick to the facts, and that's what I'm going to continue to try to do going forward.
And I will agree, Representative Lamar. I was there. I observed it. I observed the debate, the discussion, and I certainly would agree that your statements I felt were objective, were dispassionate, weren't just full of all sorts of Trey Lamar's opinion, but really more about, hey, we got a problem and we got to fix it. And I felt like that amendments being offered in the discussion about those amendments were sort of designed to divert and pivot the discussion to one of, oh no, this is all rooted in race. And I wonder if that's not being driven by what we're seeing on a national basis. We've got a federal administration, the Biden administration, and many below him in their cabinet and so forth that want to make everything about that. And as long as we do that, I don't feel like we can solve any problems.
Well, I agree with that, Gerard. I'll tell you, it's a lot of it, in my opinion, is driven by the mayor of Jackson, and this is not racial whatsoever, white, black, whatever. You've got a very radical mayor that's lording over Jackson right now. I have had multiple instances of other people that are involved in the Jackson City Council or other leadership positions in Jackson that they don't look like me. They're not the same color as me. They're not the same political party as me. And they can't get along with the mayor either. That's just the way he is. And I think he puts a lot of pressure on the Jackson delegation. And you saw him. I mean, he was sitting in the balcony with his entourage the entire time. You've already mentioned that. And he put a lot of pressure on those guys. And if you look at his comments after the debate, he specifically thanked them for the Jackson delegation and the Legislative Black Caucus for doing what he really his bidding, what he wanted to do. And he ended his statements with saying everybody else left their KKK hoods at home. That's just the kind of radical guy we've got in office there. Those comments really have no place in a fair and fair discussion and an open discussion about how do we improve the very serious crime problem that we have in Jackson. And it's unfortunate. I'll tell you this: I have had many. I'm not going to get into names because I don't want to call anybody out, but many individuals from the Democratic caucus come to me since that debate and say, hey, look, let's work together. We know there's a bad crime problem. A lot of what was said the other night was just staging, or we felt like some of them felt like they had to say it for certain reasons. But they acknowledge the crime problem and they want to sit down and work with us to try to improve it. There are many people in the Democrat Party and the Jackson delegation that recognize that. And I've told every one of them, I welcome those discussions. I look forward to working with you. I'm going to look past a lot of the comments that were made this past week. Even though I and my leadership in the House have been called a racist, everywhere from California to New York this week. We're going to look past that and we're going to try to be the bigger persons and continue to work with them to improve the capital city of Mississippi.
Trey, what was your motivation personally to author this bill? It's not really something you'd consider core to Ways and Means. It's not a matter there.
No.
Of course, this is a general bill, but we got a break right here, and we'll let you answer that on the other side. But I'm just curious as to what your personal motivation was. We're coming right back with Representative Trey Lamar on Middays. Stay with us. Representative Trey Lamar, our guest. He chairs the House Ways and Means Committee. So, Representative Lamar, before we went to break, was just curious about what motivated you personally to get involved with this legislation and author this bill.
Yep. Thanks, Gerard. I would just say, I felt like it was the right thing to do. The Capitol Complex District is it was created in 2017, and there's been a lot of talk about expanding it. I am an attorney by trade. What I call my day job. So I'm familiar with the court system. I have that background and experience, and really just hearing from a lot of people that they are tired of the back and forth in Jackson. I guess they're tired of the turf battles of this part of Jackson versus that part of Jackson, or Hinds County versus Madison County, and all this. They don't care about any of that. They just want to be able to turn on the water and have clean water come out. They want to be able to flush the toilets and the toilets work. They want to be able to walk to the mailbox without fear of their life. Those are three pretty basic things. And at the end of the day, I believe, and I, came to the conclusion that Jackson is Mississippi's capital city. It does not belong exclusively to the citizens of Jackson the way some have claimed. It's all our capital city. And I know we don't have to look far, just the states around us, to show that some of the states that are doing better than we are have a thriving um, metropolitan area. And, look at Alabama. Look at what some of the things that Birmingham has done. Look at what Huntsville has done. Go drive around Alabama's capital in Montgomery and see how nice it looks down there. Go to Nashville. Nashville's its own entity in and of itself. I mean, it's not really comparable, but Arkansas is. Go spend some time in Little Rock. Look at some of the awesome things they've got going on in Little Rock.
Baton
We don't
Rouge
have
too.
that yet. Yeah, certainly Baton Rouge as well. Go compare those metropolitan areas in our surrounding states to what we've got going on in Jackson. And so, how much more our economy is doing great across the state, but how much more, could our economy be ginning if we had a thriving metropolitan city in Mississippi? And I think Mississippi as a state as a whole will benefit from a resurgence in economic activity in the city of Jackson. And so those are just a few areas. The economic part of it is one of them. Um, we fund the CCID with tax diversions, and tax diversions come from my committee. So that's really how the legislation ended up in the Ways and Means Committee instead of solely going to the Judiciary Committee.
Okay.
But some have asked me that question, but that's why it had a tax
Okay.
element in the bill. Um, and my background with understanding the judicial system and all of that, I felt like it was a good bill to present. And no, my people in Tate County were not saying, "Hey, you better go down there and pass, this CCID judicial bill for Jackson." But this is kind of bigger than that. I feel like it's an effort to help not only the city of Jackson but the state as a whole. And when all Mississippians come to Jackson, I want them to be able to feel safe, and I want them to be able to come visit. And that's good for the people who live in Jackson, and for any Mississippian who wants to be truly be proud of their capital city. And right now, in a lot of ways, they can't be.
Yeah, and that's appreciate that. Appreciate your candor there, Trey. What I guess I really wondered, and you I think answered that. Were you hearing from people, not just in Jackson but around the state, that said we got to do something and we need your help here? Was that part of what possessed you to take action here?
Yeah, it was, and sadly, I have to admit that I'm hearing. We've heard all of us. A lot of leadership have heard from a lot of people that don't live in Jackson and say there's an element out there that just said let it go. It's too far gone.
Yeah, I heard it too.
Well,
Yeah.
I choose to take a different approach to that. It hadn't hurt me anything more than just some brain power and a lot of time, but I felt like if I'm gonna be down in Jackson this session, I might as well try to do something good. And this was kind of the main thing that we came up with to help the system. I mean, the criminal element in Jackson is real. We cited numerous statistics about that on the floor this week. Nobody can deny that. Nobody
Right.
can deny the serious backlog in the Hinds County judiciary. Um, some of the merits of the arguments against the bill deal with appointed judges is a big one. That's a red herring. I mean, there are 4 appointed judges in Hinds County right now that the Chief Justice and the Supreme Court has appointed to hear backlog of cases. Those judges' positions are being funded by ARPA money that's just temporary. It's going to
Hmm.
run out soon. So, and there are judges that are appointed uh, hearing cases all over this state. That's I tried to point out a lot of that during the floor debate. I'll give you an example where I'm from. Where judges hear cases, they're not always elected from the county where they hear cases. In my district, I live in Tate County, and several of our judges, both on the circuit and chancery court side, have been elected from other counties, but they still preside over cases in Tate County, where I'm from. This is not something that is uncommon the way it was portrayed to be. It was simply designed to not limit the judicial pool of whoever could be appointed to a smaller population inside the CCID. And the best judge may very well be from inside the CCID or somewhere else in Hinds County, but the best judge for that job may live outside of Hinds County. And I think that's something we'll continue to debate, but it's not something foreign the way it was made to sound like.
Yeah. Well, I know there was an amendment offered that would restrict the pool to just residents of Hinds County when the Supreme Court considered individuals to appoint to the bench there. And that was, and you responded to that, and of course that immediately everybody jumped to the racism conclusion and racism argument. And I didn't think that was fair and really reflected the intent there. But I guess the bigger question is, Trey, how do we dispense with this grandstanding and this just attributing every single problem to racism and move on to let's analyze, consume, consider the facts, the data, and come up with workable solutions we can all get behind. I just feel like that in our whole country we're moving away from that governing philosophy.
Yeah, I'm not one to give up. I truly believe that the best way to do that is just to stay the course and focus on communication and better communication. Not get offended when somebody says something and throws race into it. And that's, I'm trying to, I guess, be the bigger person there. And we'll see. But I've had several conversations with members of the City of Jackson delegation that said, "Hey, look, we know there's a crime problem. We want to work on this. Can we talk?" And I said, "Sure, let's talk. Let's sit down. Let's communicate better. And let's figure it out. We may not always agree on what the best solution is,
Yeah.
but the communication, and many times can help so much with some of those." Help keep us from going, some people from going down those avenues where they just get focused on things that really don't help us get to a solution.
In the time we have remaining, Representative Lamar, can you talk about how you guys came to select and carve out this particular geographic area of Jackson
Yeah,
as opposed to another area?
be glad to. So the CCID itself was formed in 2017, stretches roughly from Jackson State University to the south up to a little north of the University Medical Center in the Fondren area. Um, it's got a lot of zigs and zags in it. And last year, we turned over the Capitol Police to the Department of Public Safety and started trying to beef up the Capitol Police force to assist with helping Jackson Police Department patrol and provide law enforcement inside the CCID area. Well, if you're a law enforcement officer on the street and you've got your jurisdiction is limited to a specific area, you may have jurisdiction on Street A, but a block over on Street B, you may not have any jurisdiction. And that may look a certain way on paper, but when you're out in the street and you're,
You don't know.
actively performing your duties as a law enforcement officer, it's hard to keep up with what streets you're on and where you have jurisdiction, where you don't, in a situation where it zigs and zags like that. So we started looking at landmarks.
Trey, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We got a break. Can you hang around to continue that, and then we'll let you go if you can just continue that. Appreciate it. Representative Trey Lamar is our guest on Middays. Coming right back.